Hiya pals, this is Sarah from Little Bear Fox Farm. I'm trying something new this week by just doing a voiceover with some pictures of what's in our box this week. So this is for our week 3 winter spring CSA or produce box delivery. And it's what's in the box. So what's in the box this week? We have Purple Globe turnips. We have Thelma Sanders squash. We have some rainbow carrots. We have some Kohlrabi, kale, curly endive, Pok Choy, potatoes, and collard greens. It's a head of collard greens this time. Let's start with the abundance of greens we have. The kale and the collard greens. So the collard greens, they're in a head, but it's the same as collard green you've got from us in the past. The Pok Choy also has greens on the top. I recommend keeping those together. The Kohlrabi may have a few leaves. Those are also usable. But first off, with the collards and the kale, I would probably just chop those up so they're ready throughout the week to just toss into anything that you happen to be making for dinner. It's a lot less overwhelming that way, and you don't have to just eat a giant pile of collard greens. The Pok Choy, we're so excited for this. All Pok Choy have all eluded us until now. So this was like our first really good harvest of it, and we were so excited. We're also really excited to share with you. So I like to cut the greens from the stem part, all edible, but the stems take a bit longer to cook. So if you chop those up, and I like to wet saute, so you saute in a pan, adding some water. And then once those start to soften, then you chop up the greens and put them on top. So I'm so excited. I almost didn't want to share. So I would recommend taking our Pok Choy and making some sort of stir fry with it. You can add in some other vegetables. It would be great if you did onions, added maybe some of the carrots. Kohlrabi would also be really good with it. Some other things I would do as a way to prep would be or this is something you can do day of if you want, but roasting the turnips, the potatoes, and carrots all will be delicious. And again, 'tis the season. Just chop them all up, and olive oil, salt and pepper, garlic powder if you want in a pan. In the oven, I like to do about 400. And then check them, stirring every 20 minutes or so. It shouldn't take too long, depending on how large you cut them. The Kohlrabi would also be amazing if you roasted it. If you've never experienced Kohlrabi before, it's kind of like a broccoli stem mixed, it reminds me of jicama just because it's so crunchy, but it's not as watery, if that makes sense. But I would peel it if it's one of the larger ones. The smaller ones, the outside is fine. It can get a little fibrous though. So if you peel it and then just chop it up, you can eat it fresh, dip it in a dressing, or roasting it is really good. We also like pan sauteing. The leaves of the Kohlrabi are also edible, as are the stems. So you can treat the leaves kind of like you would any sort of cabbage. You can make a slaw out of it using mayonnaise base or olive oil and vinegar. Maybe add a little ginger and make it Asian-y. That would be really delicious. And the stems are also edible. I would just cut them up much smaller than you would the leaves. So the endive is a little newer to me. I've only ever had it in the the head where it's all together, and this is more of the curly stem, I think is another name for it. It has a similar taste, which can be overwhelmingly bitter at the end. Ours have all, again, been frost kissed, so they're a lot sweeter. So the endive is really good, but at the end it can be a little bitter, and there are some ways to get around that. So if you were to wilt it, so heat it up so it wilts, that'll take it away. You can do that in a pan, at the end on top of some other vegetables, or if you're roasting some vegetables, you can throw some greens on top and that will wilt it. Blanching, so hot water or boil water, blanch the leaves, ice water, or keep it warm if you want. Doesn't need to be very long to just cut through the bitterness. I've also read that strong flavors help. Garlic, spices, something hot. Sweet things too. I would recommend like the squash or maybe carrots to kind of cut through that for you. Acid, vinegar, or citrus can also help. Squirting that on if you wanted to eat it raw, that would help. Also, don't forget to salt it. Always salt your vegetables, at least a little bit. It will bring out so much. And then, you can also braise it. So slow cook any of your greens can be slow cooked, but it will definitely get rid of that bitterness for you. And last but certainly not least, we have our Thelma Sanders squash. It looks like an acorn squash. It is a lot sweeter and smoother in my opinion. It's one of my favorite squash. It reminds me of a sweet potato. So good. I recommend either roasting it, cutting it in half and de-seeding it, or you can cut it up into small pieces. The skin is pretty thin. I don't like to eat squash skin, but roast it. If you poke it to let steam escape, it'll roast really well in the oven, 400 degrees, and then you can either eat it right out of the skin, or you could scoop it out and add it to other things, soup, sauce, all that sort of stuff. It's so good. Just eat it on its own. You could add sugar to it, cinnamon. It doesn't really need it, like brown sugar. I think it's good with just some butter in it, personally. So that's what I would do with that. So I hope these are some ideas that will help you get through this week's box, and some inspiration. Yeah, let us know what you did make. We would love to hear about it. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.